Well, welcome to week 3 of a fantastic series that we've been in called Losing My Religion. So if you have ever been burned out, or bored with religion, this series is for you. We made a promise 2 weeks ago that we would do everything we could in this series to help you lose your religion, to walk away from it, to reject it, in the hopes of finding something so much better. But just so that we're clear, we've been defining religion as focusing on what we must do in order to earn God's favor. So it's what we do to earn God's favor. It's this sneaky belief that we have to behave a certain way, look a certain way, sound a certain way in order to be in, to be chosen, to be one of the folks in the God club. It's the belief that our behavior determines if we belong. Our behavior determines if we belong. It's making sure that you say the right things and dress the right way and go to the right places and date the right people and give the right amount of money. It's that you do it all right. And if you did it all right enough and you were good enough, then maybe, just maybe, you might be good enough to belong and to be accepted by God. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Chuck E. Cheese, and we've been talking about the idea of earning tickets. And Jason, our new senior pastor, has shared his love of Chuck E. Cheese as a kid and how much he loves the lifeless animatronic eyes of that mouse. Now, guys, as Jason's friend, we just need to take a little time out. He's newly become our senior pastor, and I don't think he would ever say this from stage, but I think he would just love it if a couple of thousand of you would go to Chuck E. Cheese, take a selfie with that soulless rat, and send him a photo of you and the rat. Like, I think nothing says I love you like a couple of thousand photos in your inbox saying, hey, welcome to being the new senior pastor. It's just an idea. You don't know if it works until we give it a try, though. Actually, it's a terrible idea. I never want to get into another pranking war with Jason. Those were some of the worst mistakes ever in my life. But Jason's idea, the reason why he brought up Chuck E. Cheese is actually, it's brilliant. And what he shared is that so many of us, we go to Chuck E. Cheese with the hope of earning tickets, with the hope of winning the game, of playing it right, of doing enough good to then hopefully get a good prize. If we do enough good, then we get a good prize. But if you're not good at the games, if you can't shoot free throws, if you're not a skee ball player, if you don't know the arcades, then if you're not good, you don't get good, you don't get anything. And how many of us, we're kind of tricked. We're kind of tricked into thinking that's sort of how God works. And so we go to God and we say, hey, look at what I did. I've earned all these tickets for you. I've prayed so much. I gave so much. I held babies. I worked with middle schoolers. Like, that's a lot of tickets right there. Like, surely, God, I have done so much for you. Look at all that I've done. And we go to him and we're like, look at this. Now that I've done all of this, surely I can get from you what I want. It's one of the ways of approaching God in an attempt to earn his love, to earn his favor. It's the belief that if we do good, we get good. If we do good, we get good. Another way to say that is if we do bad, we get bad. We do bad, we get bad. I mean, this plays out as, man, don't break the rules or you'll get punished. Don't step out of line or you'll get put back in line. Don't screw up too much or lightning might be coming for you. Guys, I'm shocked at how many people tell me after church they're shocked they didn't get struck by lightning walking in. And I know some are joking, but I think some are honestly believing it. Like, there's this idea that we have to obey or we're gonna be punished, that we have to follow the rules or we're gonna be busted. And a lot of us have experienced that. A lot of us know the fear of the paddle. Now, side note, this is actually my childhood paddle. So my mom moved in with us a couple of years ago and I said, hey mom, do you by any chance still have our childhood paddle? And to my shock, she does. To my terror, she could get it really fast. Like, she's like instantly produces this thing and I'm like, yes ma'am, I'm so sorry ma'am, yes ma'am. Like, fear, I feel like I'm like 8 years old all over again. But paddles have a way of getting us back in line. When the paddle comes out, we start acting right. We start playing the part. We start doing whatever we think that they want us to do, that the role we're supposed to play, because the paddle scares us. It will scare our behavior even if our heart's not there. I had a friend recently pass me this story And it's the story of a mom who kept telling her young son to sit down, to sit down, to sit down, to sit down, and the son would never sit down. And so finally she just said in exhaustion, do I need to get the paddle out so you'll sit down? And the kid sat down and he said, my body's sitting, but my heart is standing. Isn't that true for all of us? Like the paddles or the fear of punishment, they have a way of getting our outward behavior to act the way that someone wants us to act, to look the way that someone wants us to look, to play the role of the obedient son or daughter or spouse or coworker or employee. But our heart doesn't follow fear. Our heart doesn't follow fear. And a lot of people fear God, walking around with a paddle, just waiting to light one of us up, waiting just to get us when we step out of line. Or we fear that God's gonna get someone who we love for stepping out of line. So we take up the paddle and on God's behalf, we try to help them, instruct them, guide them, make sure they don't step out of line because we know that if they step out of line, they're gonna get God's wrath. And we're trying to help them, so we are the ones holding the paddle, trying to get them to stay on God's good side. It's really easy to think that's true. But Jesus actually shows us a very, very different way. There's times when I read about Jesus that I just find myself laughing because like there's these moments that you read about Jesus and he's just so kind and gentle and caring and soft. I mean, it's like everything precious moments, cuddly Jesus, you know? And then there's other moments that you're just like, who's this? Like homeboy just straight up picks a fight, throws down on people, goes toe to toe with them, has strong language and big challenges. And you're like, who's this guy? Like it is amazing the times that he will just straight up flex on someone. But every time he flexes on someone, every time he goes toe to toe with someone, Jesus always does it with the same group of people. Actually, he never does it with the screw ups or the sinners or the ones whose lives are a hot mess. He always does it with the most religious, the most pious, the most holy among them. He does it with the actors, the ones who are playing the role, the ones who are committed to playing the part that they are fearful God needs them to play. He always does it with the scribes and the Pharisees, the scribes and the Pharisees. And if you don't know who the scribes and the Pharisees are, the scribes, they were like the experts in the Jewish law. They were the experts in interpreting what the Old Testament had to say. And then the Pharisees were devoted to helping people live out these interpretations. And at the time of Jesus, there's about like 6,000 Pharisees in Jerusalem. So there's a fair amount of these Pharisees roaming around, helping people make sure they fully obey the scribes' interpretation, that they fully obey the law. And so they are walking around in every town as the enforcers of the letter of the law, the enforcers of the letter of the law. And I used to think the Pharisees were always the bad guys. And I thought they were the bad guys because that's who Jesus always got into arguments with. I thought they were the bad guys because they're the ones who ultimately would lead to Jesus's murder. But my heart broke for the Pharisees when I started to realize their story, when I started to realize what made them the way that they were. And to understand why the Pharisees were the way that they were, we got to back up about 500, 600 years. See, Israel's a nation. And Israel is a nation, it's a tiny nation, but it is a nation that is blessed and favored and most importantly, protected by God. I mean, Israel is about the size of New Jersey. So it's a tiny nation surrounded by giant nations. And the only reason why it exists, the only reason why it's been able to carve a little bit of geography out next to the Mediterranean Sea is because God made it so. With his favor, with his blessing, with his protection. And so God is making this nation exist. Well, this nation starts really misbehaving. They start doing some really dumb stuff, some really bad choices. And God's like, hey, I can't be a part of what you're doing. I can't condone what you're doing. Hey, I don't want anything to do with that. So he starts to give them warnings. He sends all these prophets, and the prophets are like, hey, if you keep doing this, God's gonna pull away his blessing. He's gonna pull away his favor. He's gonna pull away his protection. Don't keep doing that. And they keep doing it. And so finally, God's like, yo, have it your way. And he gets really stern with them. And he's like, if you keep doing this, if you don't straighten up, if you don't stop it, I can't protect you. I can't bless this. Well, they don't. And so God eventually is like, hey, if you're gonna act like that, I'm not gonna be a part of that. And so he pulls back. And the nation is ransacked, burned to the ground. And then most of the nation is carried away into foreign lands as slaves in the captivity. And while they're pulled away into slavery and captivity in these other lands, they realize that God wasn't joking. They realized that he really was the reason why they existed. He really was protecting them. He really was making them be able to exist. And if they didn't follow him, they didn't trust him, he wouldn't be able to protect them. But they apply that logic of trusting God for God's protection and relationship and favor, but they apply it a degree too far. They go too far with that logic, and they go from how do we trust God to how do we perfectly obey God. From how do I trust God to how do I perfectly do everything he would ever say. How do I perfectly follow? Because if I don't do it perfectly, then I'll be punished. And they did not want to be punished again. Well, God in his faithfulness and his kindness, he actually takes them out of slavery. He reestablishes them as a nation, which is absolutely unheard of for a group of slaves to be sent back to their homeland, for their nation to be restored and rebuilt. It's like a miracle that it happened. And it was in that process that the Pharisees come on the scene. The Pharisees come about because the Pharisees, they become super focused on never letting the nation drift back to where it was, never letting the nation step out of line again. And actually they did what so many of us do. They twisted their understanding of God and they went too far. They went a step too far and they took a degree off truth and they started believing that if they were obedient enough and pure enough and stringent enough, that if they never, ever stepped out of line and adhered to all the rules, then they could get enough tickets, and God would bless them and favor them again and protect them again, and nothing bad would ever happen to them again, ever again. Just a degree or two off. But those misclicks, those misunderstandings are so detrimental, so destructive in the worst kinds of ways. So out of fear, out of a misunderstanding, out of a misapplied faithfulness, the Pharisees picked up a paddle and they walked around making sure that everyone was staying in line, that no one stepped out of line, that everyone was looking the part, that they were acting how they should, because they knew how delicate of a balance their existence was and they couldn't allow them to mess it up because in their mind, God was moody and God was fickle. And if you cross God, he'll cross you. And so they used fear to keep everyone in line. And they didn't want the nation to lose any tickets because they knew if they lost too many tickets as a nation, they wouldn't be good enough for God. And well, they didn't want to repeat what had happened a few years earlier. So for them, it was no longer about a relationship with God, no longer about trusting God. It was about adhering to the rules, to earn God's favor, to earn this twisted, fearful relationship with God. So when Jesus steps onto the scene, he sees these teachers, these ancient pastors walking around with a paddle, not leading people to the heart of God, to a relationship with God, but to the adherence of rules, to this strict standard of obedience, to this absence of grace and understanding, to a black and white, clear cut, who's in, who's out, who's good enough, do this or else understanding of God. And here's the crazy things about rules. Rules, they love to make more rules. Policies love to make more policies. And before long, there's a rule for everything, for every situation, for every moment. And when one's acceptance into society and one's approval from authority is based upon a massive list of rules, of do's and don'ts, it's exhausting. It's overwhelming. It's oppressive. It's impossible. And when there's no room to not be perfect, no room to not be perfect, the only option, the only thing left is to fake it. When there's no room to not be perfect, the only option is to fake it. And that was true for Israel. And that's true for us today. And it's also true for our families and our teams and our coworkers and our marriages. When there's no room to not be perfect, the only option is to fake it. And that's the backbone of religion. Play the part. appear like you have it all together. Because basically you gotta act, look, and play the role or else. You gotta act, look, and play the role or else. And this pretending, this acting, it drove Jesus crazy. So every time he flexes on someone, every time he throws down to someone, every time he goes toe to toe with someone, it's about this. It's about not acting and looking and playing the role. It's about how do you have a genuine relationship, not a pretend relationship. And he could not stand that these religious bullies were beating up on people, that they were oppressing them with their rules and their do's and their don'ts and their shame and their fear. So in Matthew 21, we see this really bizarre encounter with Jesus where he is so out of his normal character. See, the chapter starts with Jesus coming into Jerusalem, and it's called the triumphant entry. And basically the city just goes crazy over Jesus. Folks are laying down their coats and their branches, and they're making this pathway for him to ride in on, and they're cheering, and they're ready to make him king, and they're all excited, and they're pro Jesus, and everybody's cheering for him. And here's just a dark side about when people start cheering or saying really great things about you, whether it's in a crowd or online or in person. Like, crowds can pivot really quick, because this crowd, they went from wanting to make Jesus king to wanting to kill him in a week. Like, crowds change in a hurry. And so you gotta be careful about what the crowds are saying, or you can find yourself in a mess in a hurry. But on this day, Jesus is heralded into the city. Praises are going up all around him. And he goes to the center of the city, to the temple, to the center of worship, and he does the craziest thing. Listen to what Jesus does. He rides in, and Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out all the people buying and selling animals for sacrifice. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. He said to them, "The scriptures declare my temple will be called a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a den of thieves." So here Jesus goes riding into the temple, and he starts clearing house. He's throwing tables, he's kicking over chairs, he's spilling money on the floors. He's driving people out, and he's making a huge scene, and everyone is talking about it. And he calls out the Pharisees for missing the point. And there's this heated exchange between him and them, and Jesus publicly starts asking them in the most embarrassing way. He just says to them, he says, "Haven't you ever read the scriptures?" Like, in front of everyone. And it's like their job to read the scriptures. It's their job to know the scriptures. Everyone thinks they know the scriptures the best. And Jesus publicly is challenging their pride. I mean, it's like going to your doctor and being like, "Have you ever held a stethoscope?" Or handing your mechanic a wrench and being like, "You should use one of these one day." Like, it was so insulting. And so it is on between Jesus and the Pharisees. The tension is real between these guys. Well, a few days later, Jesus comes back into town. And these guys have now rallied, and they're ready to go toe to toe with Jesus. And they come up and they're demanding on whose authority he's doing these things, which is their way of kind of declaring like they're in charge and not him. And they start asking him questions. They're trying to trip him up. They're trying to trap him. And finally, Jesus just kind of gets done with them. He's at the end of his rope with these guys, and he turns to the crowd and he just lets loose. But let's pick up what he does in Matthew chapter 23 in our Bibles at the seats. So our Bibles in our seats, it's page 753. You can turn there on your phone, Matthew 23. Let's read what Jesus says after these guys have pushed him and pushed him and pushed him, and he's watched them just weigh down people with all the rules and obedience and all of this burden that they've created. And finally, he just has it with the Pharisees, and he goes toe to toe with them. So Matthew chapter 23, verse 1, pages 753 with the Bibles in our seat. Then Jesus said to the crowd and to his disciples, "The teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. So practice and obey what they tell you." This is like dripping with sarcasm. Basically, he's saying, hey, they're the teachers, they're the teachers, they're the teachers. And the sarcasm comes in with this next jab. He said, "But don't follow their example, for they don't practice what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands. They never lift a finger to ease the burden. Everything they do is for show. On their arms, they wear extra wide prayer boxes and scripture verses inside, and they wear robes with extra long tassels. Basically, they wear the most gaudy possible religious symbols just to show how holy and good they are. And they love to sit at the table, the head of the table at banquets, in the seat of honor in the synagogue. They love to receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi." Jesus basically calls them out, and he says, these guys love to look good. They love for others to think they are so holy, so right, so put together. So Jesus accuses them of only caring about themselves, only care about looking good, and not actually caring for others, actually caring about their heart or others' heart or helping others' lives get better, about being selfish. In fact, he accuses them that the best way for them to look good is to make you look bad. And Jesus calls out their abusive religious piety. And he says, stop it. That's wrong. It's mean. That's not from God. And then he goes on and he does something really slick. He grabs this word from the Greek theater scene called hypocrites. And he grabs this word, which refers to an actor who would literally put on a different mask to play different roles. He would put on a mask to pretend to be something. And he calls out these Pharisees' hypocrisy. They're pretending. And he says he says that they are doing the right things, but they're doing it for the wrong reason. They're putting on these religious piety masks to play the role of holy, better than, in front of everyone. Why are they doing that? Because they wanted their ego stroked. They wanted to make it all about them. They wanted to be made much of. They wanted to be seen as a big deal. Why did they want that? Because they believed that if God gets angry, they want to at least look better than you. Guys, whenever we fixate on religion, on rules, on trying to earn God's favor, we eventually all hit this point where we realize we can't. We can't be good enough. We can't get enough tickets. We don't know if we've earned enough to have favor from God. And if we can't be sure that we're good enough for God, then we can be sure to at least be better than them. Religion will always create a them, someone that we want to be better than them, someone who we're holier than them, someone who we can put in their place as we're better than them. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever been someone's them? That they put you down to make them appear better? Have you ever been guilty of being that person? Of looking down on someone because you wanted to feel better about how you're doing? Have you ever believed you just got to do the right thing, the right way, to look the part, to act the part, to play the part, to perform the role, to act, look, play the role of the hypocrite? The hypocrite who is the one who puts on the mask, not to do the right things, but to present the right things. Ever felt that? Ever felt the pressure to perform, to be what you feel others needed you to be, wanted you to be? Have you ever felt like God needed you to perform or act or present a certain way? I mean, guys, this tension is real. I mean, don't we all want to kind of appear like we have it together? Don't we all want to be seen as someone who's competent? And it's scary. It is so scary taking off the mask and showing what's really happening in our marriages and with our kids and with our job and with our grades. It's terrifying to share, hey, here's what's happening in my head and my thoughts and in my heart. Like, it's scary. Like, the role of the hypocrite, it honestly feels safe. And it feels like you're in control. You're in control of what others see and like you're protected behind your mask. But the truth is, the mask, the playing of the hypocrite, especially when it comes to God and others, it destroys us. It deceives us. Ultimately, it burdens us. And it cheapens our relationships. It cheapens our relationship with God, and it cheapens our relationship with each other. And Jesus that day, he's talking to these Pharisees, these masters of hypocrisy who can play the role of the hypocrite so well. And he gives them 6 quick warnings of what happens whenever we play the role of the hypocrite. He starts off and he says, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You won't go in yourself, and you won't let others enter either." Basically, he's saying, You're so busy declaring who's good enough for God, who's in, who's out, that you've missed the whole point. You have totally missed the point of grace. And guys, one of the clearest signs that someone doesn't understand grace, what they have been given, is if they can't give grace to someone else. If you can receive grace, but you can't give grace, Jesus says you're playing the role of the hypocrite. He then continues, and he says, what sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cross land and sea to make one convert, and then you turn the other person into twice the child of hell as you yourselves are. Man, not only are you living this way personally, you're teaching others to live that way as well. Worse than you, more zealous, more stringent, more legalistic. Hypocrites make more hypocrites. They force obedience, looking right, playing the part, playing the role. They care more about others' conformity than they do their heart. Jesus continues and he says, what sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb garden, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things. Man, you get so focused on the most minuscule level of detail and adherence, but you totally miss the big picture. Making sure all the rules are followed, but missing the person who actually needs to be loved. He continues, and he says, what sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. Man, you present a good game, but you know your heart's wicked. You know what's going on in your head. You know what you think about. You know the longings of your heart, and you do everything you can to put the mask up and let no one ever see it. What sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones and all sorts of impurity. Again, it's all show, and you know that you're actually dead on the inside and you're terrified to tell anyone. What sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build tombs for the prophets your ancestors killed, and you decorate the monuments of the godly people your ancestors destroyed. Then you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would have never joined them in killing the prophets. Man, you are just as bad as the people you shame and blame, and you say you never would be like them, but in reality, your pride has completely blinded you. Man, Jesus calls out these religious hypocrites who are walking around with a paddle, walking around making sure that everyone else is obeying, everyone else is following the rules, staying in line, doing what they're told. And he publicly declares, you may look holy, you may sound holy, you might have the crowds fooled, but I know your heart. I know who you really are. I see the act you're playing. And Jesus calls them out and he says, you've made it all about religion. And religion makes it all about acting, looking, and playing the role. And that simply isn't the heart of God. Religion says, man, you have to dress right, act right, talk right, parent right, date right, behave right, vote right, look right. You have to do it the right way or else. Have you ever felt that how you acted, how you looked, how you presented yourself mattered more to Jesus? Man, if you've ever felt that way, I just want you to know you weren't being shown Jesus. You were being taught religion, taught to play the role of the hypocrite. Or maybe you felt like it was your job to make sure that others dressed right, acted right, talked right, parent right, dated right, behaved right, voted right, looked right, the right way, or else maybe you felt it was your job to make sure others got it right, that getting it right mattered most. Man, I just need to let you know, you're not helping them discover Jesus when you do that. You're teaching them to obey your fear, and you're teaching them to be Pharisees, to be hypocrites. See, God doesn't need us walking around with a paddle. God doesn't need us walking around with a paddle saying, do this, act this way, behave this way, look this way. He needs us walking around saying, guys, there's a better way. There's a better way. Come on, there's a better way. There's a better way. There's a better way. There's a way of love. There's a way of grace. There's a way of forgiveness. There's a way that transforms your heart. There's a way that our heart can truly change. There's a way. There's a way. There's a way. Hey, I know your marriage is a mess. I know your Instagram feed's real crazy. I know you really struggle with alcohol. I know your kids are off the rail. I know you're cheating at your job. I know that your spouse hates you. I know. You don't have to get any of that right. Just come on. Just come on. Just come on. Just come on, because Jesus says there's a better way. There's a better way. There's a better way. Just come on and discover Jesus and discover looking at Jesus. And as your heart discovers Jesus, as you look at Jesus and you let him change him, if your heart changes, it's a matter of time before your behavior catches up to your heart. So stop trying to follow all the rules and put your eyes on Jesus. It changes everything. Growing up, my sister and I, we had some really funny moments. I will say that the paddle is broken because of my sister, not because of me. But my sister and I, we had some really great moments as kids. But one of the moments that that made me laugh the most, that I hope I never forget, happened at the Carlsons' house. The Carlsons were real good friends. And two things you need to know. First is the Carlsons loved animals. Like so many cats, so many dogs, gerbils, guinea pigs, hamsters, like the whole thing. Like their house was a zoo at times. My sister, second thing you gotta know is my sister does not like animals. Like at all. Like she's not an animal person. Like she really does not like animals. Well, this one night, there was a big group of us hanging out at the Carlson's house. My sister fell asleep on the couch. And so she's asleep on the couch and a cat crawls up on her lap. And it crawls up in her leg and like curls up to her. And it's really cute. Everyone's like, oh, there's a cat cuddling with Jen. How sweet is that? Well, it's not cute whenever my sister wakes up and realizes a rodent is on her leg and she just instinctively wants to get the rodent off. And so she flings her legs up in the air. Well, she didn't. She really overestimated the weight of the cat. And so what needed to be a little nudge became a catapult. And the next thing you know, this cat is literally flying across the living room. And to her younger brother, I'm like, this is the most amazing thing because this cat's moving like 10 feet across the air. And I'm like, it's good. You know, the cat's like hauling across the living room. It was awesome for me, but not for the Carlsons who thought their poor cat was now dead. And I'm like, nah, it's good. It's got 9 more lives. You're good. But like, it was a great moment. Jen does not like cats. Well, fast forward a few years, my sister, she goes to college. She meets a guy, she gets married, she falls in love. They start their own home, their own marriage, that whole thing. And what struck me one day was when I walked into her house, she now had animals. She didn't have just one cat, she had 2 cats. She didn't have just one dog, not 2 dogs, but 3 dogs. Like her house had become a zoo. And I was shocked that my sister went from like hating animals and kicking them across the living room to now like having a zoo and herd in her living room. Like I was like, what happened? And I honestly believe that God gave me this realization to help me better understand my sister, but more importantly, to help me better understand him. See, what dawned on me was my sister, she had met someone. She had fallen in love with someone. And from a place of love, she fell in love with the things that drew her closer to him. And he loved cats, and he loves dogs, and she loved him. And it was just a matter of time that she fell in love with the things that he loved. And Jesus says, just come fall in love with me. Just focus on me. Focus on my eyes. Let my heart overwhelm your heart. Just focus on Jesus. And eventually, over time, his heart will slowly transform your heart. And the next thing you know, your behavior will look different than it once did. You'll desire things that you used to never desire. You will not want to do things you used to want to do. Jesus just says, focus on me. Religion says focus on your behavior, focus on the rules. Pharisees walk around with a paddle pointing out how you need to get in line. The followers of Jesus, they can walk around just pointing out Jesus. Say, man, let's follow him together. Let's follow him together. So if you're here today and you've been hurt by a religious bully, I just want to say I'm so sorry. As someone who's been hurt by religious bullies, I just want you to know that was not Jesus' heart for you. You experienced the fear of a Pharisee. And if you were given a paddle and you were told that it's your job to keep others in line, and that keeping others in line is actually what makes you faithful, man, I also want to say I'm so sorry. Perfection is an impossible burden to carry. And Jesus says you can drop the paddle, and instead you can just hold his hand. Man, what would our communities look like if we were full of people not pointing out others' mistakes, but pointing out the heart of God? What would happen if we were less religious for Jesus and more relational with Jesus? The world needs a lot less Pharisees, and it needs a whole lot more followers of Jesus saying, come on. Let's discover the heart of God together. Jesus, thank you that you do not have a long list of rules that you are looking at us and scrutinizing us over. Instead, you have your arms open wide, saying grace makes it possible for you to accept us exactly as we are. And so, Jesus, I pray that today we will trust you enough to take off the mask, to stop pretending and playing and acting, and just get real with you. And I pray that we will experience your love. Jesus, I pray that for those of us who've been hurt by religious bullies, who we felt like we had to behave and pretend and act in order to be accepted, I pray that we will hear your voice very loud, reminding us that you love us, you care for us, and you don't need us to pretend for you. And for those of us who were given a paddle and said faithfulness means going around making sure other people stay in line, I pray that we will trust you enough with those that we love to let you transform their heart, and us just put on display what a transformed heart looks like. So we'll drop the paddles and hold on to you. Jesus, help our communities be full of people pointing you out and not pointing out where others need to get better. Jesus, help us experience your heart and to be changed by you. We love you, we thank you, and we trust you. It's in your name we pray, amen.